We've got a huge update today, so make sure you guys watch the whole thing as I'm dropping a Set 2 teaser at the end. Let's dive in. Alright, so we cleared US Customs. This is a huge deal because it means the product is officially in the United States. Now we've got to arrange for it to be picked up, so expect another week or so before it gets to the fulfillment center. And then once at the fulfillment center, they're going to do an inventory on everything, make sure it's good, and then they're going to start shipping it out to people. So this is really exciting as the majority of the Elestrals cards are obviously in the US, but I do ask that you guys stay really patient with us as it's over 6,000 orders that need to be shipped, and there's still always the possibilities for delays. So just understand that. I think we're probably going to start seeing our first American customers getting it towards the end of July, potentially bleeding into August. But nonetheless, getting through customs was a big deal for us. This was part of the process that could have really delayed us the most, so I'm really excited that we're actually moving forward here. For Canada, EU, the rest of Europe, all that stuff, we're on track for August still as far as I know. So hang tight on that. Sorry it's going to be a little bit delayed from some of the other parts of the world, but you're going to get your stuff, so just hang tight. If for some reason you have any issues with your order or need to contact us directly, you can send an email to elestrals@offdutyninja.com. That is a support team that's handling the Kickstarter fulfillment, and they'll get you whatever you need. So just shoot them a message, but just be mindful, it is a holiday weekend here in the US, so a lot of companies are gonna be off until July 5th. So if there's any delays in any sort of answers, just please be patient. There's not many people working over the holiday. I will be, but you know, a lot of these teams that do fulfillment and stuff, they're probably taking some time off. Regarding our Australian friends, it's my knowledge that every single backer in Australia, except for like 2, have gotten their stuff. So the 2 people I've personally reached out to and I've talked to them about kind of the hang up there. But I'm happy to report that we have seen 4 stellar rare Elestrals that have been found. No Brainer actually pulled the Stellar Viscerus, the first one ever, and then pulled another Stellar Viscerus, which is crazy. I think they have number 11 and number 99. We also saw our first starter deck Stellar pulled by your boy Benny, who pulled a Stellar Sprouter out of the Centaur starter deck. So congratulations, Benny. And last but not least, Arcvius pulled the first of 3 secret Stellar rares, which is Stellar Aphoros. So if you're an Aphoros fan, that's gonna be one you're gonna wanna chase down. It's a beautiful card art by Phoebe. I personally love it. And I'm gonna keep the other 2 secret Stellars a secret for now and let one of you or 2 of you guys pull it and you can share it yourselves. Oh, and now's a good time to tell you guys that we're actually working on a Stellar tracker that should be available in the next few weeks for everybody. So you're gonna be able to see which Stellars have been pulled, who has them, the location, that kind of stuff, obviously with data privacy involved. It's gonna be really awesome, and this is one of the many tools that we're creating to put the community first and do some really awesome stuff. So big shout out to our team for putting this together. I've got some cool screenshots to show you for now, but we're still very work in progress, so give us a few more weeks and we'll have this rolled out. Regarding our Elestrals digital app, our team has been crushing it. Things are coming along really, really good. We implemented spectator mode most recently, so players can join into existing lobbies and watch the matches, and it's actually going really well, so that's a huge win. But I am gonna say that our rollout is probably gonna be another 3 to 6 weeks. I'm giving ourselves a little bit of a buffer, more so we can have time to prepare our internal teams to handle the influx of new players and questions and people learning the game, and it's gonna nicely time out with kind of the US shipments going out, so I think the timing is gonna be really good. The way the rollout is gonna work is we're gonna be migrating everything to our main Discord server, discord.gg/Elestrals. That is where you're gonna be able to play against people and find matches and so on and so forth. We're gonna be emailing all backers with a link to a survey, essentially. You're gonna fill out a little form. You're gonna select whether you're on iOS or Android. We're gonna take your information and we're gonna send you basically a download link to the Google Play Store or to Test Flight on iOS, so you can download the app from there and ultimately play it on your device. My plan for non-backers is to roll out the app pretty shortly thereafter. I think I'll probably roll it out within a few weeks after backers get it, but it'll give us a little bit more of a test window to make sure everything's running the way it needs to, and we can handle the capacity of so many more players trying to play at once. I do just want to note that this is a beta release. It's not going to be available publicly on the App Store even after we roll it out. So I just want to make that note. It's probably going to stay in beta for quite some time. So stay patient with us. Again, we're a very small dev team when it comes to this app, but I think you're gonna find it to be an incredible tool for learning and playing Elestrals with your friends, and it's gonna be awesome. And again, I stick by what I said on the last update video, that the monetization rollout is going to be purely cosmetic. We've got some really cool ideas for that. I'm super excited to share more as we integrate those into the app, so stay tuned for that. But when you download the app and you play it for the first time, you'll have access to every single functional card in the game, so you can make the optimal deck from day one. That's it, very simple. Now, in a couple of past updates, I've alluded to a core rules update bulletin, and I'm gonna hit you guys with that information right now. let's just rip the band-aid off. Long story short, we found it was necessary to errata or update some cards from Kickstarter before printing our first edition, which is now in a prototype phase. The reason for this is really future-proofing and clarity, as well as fitting these cards into different templates and defining our syntax better. This is incredibly crucial as we develop the game out and more cards get introduced, that we have these templates, we have these kind of standards, so that way people understand what the effects do, how they activate, how they apply to the chain, and so on and so forth. I do want to say that even though we are errataing a ton of cards, none of this impacts your Kickstarter cards. You are able to still use your Kickstarter cards in competitive play moving forward. However, they will refer to the new rules text or the new text on the cards whenever you play them. Pretty much every single change is very minimal, and you'll see if you look at the news update bulletin, the full one, that the changes are pretty insignificant when all things is said and done. It's just a matter of us future-proofing. So don't stress too much. This next segment is really for the hardcore, high-level competitive players who are very, very into the game. If you're someone playing on a casual level, this probably isn't going to impact you too much. I should also mention, if you go to the Elestrals website, I'll have a link in the description below where you can actually check out the full update and see exactly what changed. But again, it's a lot of little things like changing, as long as to while and things like that, so we can set up our templates better for the future. So the first thing we did was separate the term negate, suppress, and misenchant. Previously, when Kickstarter was created, our project, there was no term for suppress. We decided to create a new keyword in the game called suppress. So the term negate previously meant that you canceled an action and removed the effects of a card, essentially, right? Now we split it into two things. So negate is to cancel an action and remove it from the chain, whereas suppress is actually to temporarily remove a printed effect. So there's a pretty big distinction here. For example, when P-Gus receives a spirit, it's going to activate its effect on the chain, at which point you could negate that effect with a card that negates effect. However, if you were to activate P-Gus and try to suppress P-Gus, you wouldn't be able to stop P-Gus effect from activating because suppressing doesn't stop the effect while it's on the chain. It would just stop the effect from happening in the future, in that designated time period, if that makes sense. Cards like Gorgon's Gaze have been errated to include both suppress and negate, so it functions very similar to how it performed before, but cards like Crackade, when they're cast, are going to suppress Elestrals instead of negate them, because when you're casting Crackade, there's really nothing on the chain for you to negate. You're simply going to stop that Elestral that you're targeting from having an effect in future play state. Suppression is a very key mechanic moving into set 2, so as we introduce new cards, it's going to make a lot more sense about that design space, but ultimately this is a really positive change for the game, and it impacts very little things in terms of the overall gameplay. It simply just defines the two terms and separates them for more design space. We've also decided to make it clear that there's an independence of sources and effects, so once an effect is activated, it's now considered separate from its source. Actions that destroy, suppress, or have any other impact on that source don't do anything to its effect on the chain. Likewise, negating an effect in the chain doesn't do anything to its source. So we're basically saying that when you have an Elestral and its effect activates and becomes an effect on the chain, doing something to the Elestral doesn't stop that effect in the chain, and vice versa. They're independent of each other. So it's very important and when you get into complex chain layering and things like that when this stuff comes up, but ultimately that's the main purpose there. Some cards can specifically apply to both the effect on the chain and the card it came from, like Gorgon's Gaze, which negates the Elestral's effect on the chain, and it suppresses the Elestral from doing anything in the future with its effect. We're also introducing a term called field checks, and we're going to be performing those in between chains. So previously, a card with too few enchanting spirits or an artifact that lost its Elestral would be sent to the underworld immediately before players had a chance to react. Now those objects are only checked for these conditions and sent to the underworld after the chain is resolved. If a card has a conditional effect waiting in limbo, then it's ignored for this round of the check, but the same check will happen after the next chain and every chain thereafter. So there's some unique circumstances where effects can chain themselves and actually apply to the following chain later on. Previously, if that were to happen, there's this awkward state where the Elestral or whatever is removed from the field because it's under enchanted, but the effect is floating there, and then we have this independence of effect and source. So now we're saying, okay, if there is an effect that's waiting on the chain to be applied to the chain in a future subsequent chain that's already built, then we're going to keep things in their current state until everything resolves. Then we're going to do this field check and then remove these different things. So the field checks still take place, but it's just a matter of keeping the sources there while the effects still linger to be applied, and then they provide the field check to ultimately make those distinctions and remove the cards from play if they are misenchanted or under-enchanted in this case, rather. We've also decided to introduce a new zone called Limbo, but don't worry, it's not changing anything in terms of how you see the game. Limbo is kind of like an arbitrary zone that allows you to kind of put things that haven't resolved into some sort of a tangible, or at least mentally tangible space. So when a player casts an Elestral or a rune, or when they activate an effect, it goes into Limbo. This is a brand new zone that exists to hold objects that haven't resolved yet, and it's separate from your hand, dex, field, and underworld. If a card or effect enters Limbo while the chain is open, it's added right away to the newest link of the chain. If a card is cast or a conditional effect is met while the chain is closed, it waits to form a link the next time the chain opens. So again, not a huge deal. This is really just us defining some of these instances of like, okay, I announced that I'm going to cast this card to the field. Well, before the cast resolves, where is that card? Well, it's in my hand, or is it on the field? We're defining that as Limbo. So it's kind of in the middle of not actually being in your hand or not actually being on the field, but it's in this intermediate space that is really more so to define the more complex characteristics of the game and kind of interact, because in Elestrals you have this really unique scenario where you're grabbing a spirit and a card and you have to make that decision at once, but if the cast doesn't resolve, then there's some interesting things. So again, a lot of future proofing being done here. And last but not least, we have a term called the response window. The new term response window describes behavior that is being slightly expanded. Whenever a player starts a chain, the game moves to the response window. Conditional effects can be activated and priority is passed back and forth to allow casting counter runes, but those are the only actions allowed at this time. Moving forward, this window also opens after a chain resolves. Players get a chance to use counter runes before the turn player can take actions that require an empty chain, such as casting an Elestral, changing positions, or activating effects. The reason for this is basically there's a window of time when a chain resolves that both players have a chance to respond to the state of the game. Previously, we introduced a mechanic where players would basically take turn priority. So as the turn player, I would have turn priority, and I would need to pass turn priority to my opponent in order for them to make an action, right? And the priority changes when you start casting cards. But we found this very strange design space where a chain would close, and then I wouldn't have, as an opposing player, have a chance to really do anything, and it made a few cards a little awkward. Poison Tipped Arrow was the main culprit here. So we introduced this response window, which is a secondary piece that, again, exists for players to have an opportunity to cast counter runes in between chains without having, you know, the turn priority back and forth and allowing the turn player to basically dominate the conversation in a way. So again, all of these changes are really technical and probably don't apply to most players who are playing the game, but I felt it necessary to put this out there. So if you're a high-level player and you want to dive into all this stuff, we'll have the bulletin on our website and you can check all the information out there. Again, don't stress about any of this. It's overwhelming for even me, right? And I created the game, so again, don't stress. This is really, really high-level competitive play stuff, and it's not going to change anything of what you guys are playing at home. So nothing to worry about. I do recommend, though, you check out the news bulletin on our website to see all of the updated cards. We errated a handful of things, but again, me scrolling through this list right now, it's very minimal stuff. Like, we added From Your Underworld and Artifact Rune on Aramare. Like, just clarifiers, right? It's just clarifying certain things. When you're targeted by an opponent's S apostrophe instead of apostrophe S on Bag of Winds, right? Like, just some little things like that. Changing as long as this is happening to while this is happening, right? So there's a few different things that we did to kind of tweak some of these cards. Some are a little bit more significant than others, but generally speaking, they don't change any of the functionality of any of these cards. So again, look through it at your leisure just for fun, but don't get stressed about any cards getting changed or messed up in any sort of massive capacity. And lastly, I thought it'd be fun to leave you guys with a Set 2 teaser. I haven't given you much there. People have been asking me when is Set 2 being teased. I just posted last night that I worked really hard yesterday on Set 3. I've been grinding Set 3. We're polishing up Set 2. We're gonna be going to print with Set 2 pretty soon. I would say in the next 6 weeks, I'm gonna be submitting that for print. So Set 2 is fully in the works, that's for sure. So I thought I'd give you a little teaser. If you're not in the Discord server yet, definitely join the Discord server because I legitimately post there almost every day responding to people, and we have a blast doing that. And I also post little teasers in there all the time. So if you like cryptic screenshots of, you know, Elestrals that haven't been revealed yet, or me teasing different ideas or whatever that are gonna come to fruition, that's the place to be. But for now, I'd like to introduce you to my little friend Frostmite, which is a Frost Nexus of Warmite that'll be debuting in our set later this year, so get excited for that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.